And I love this new Mac system. I bring something up to the top and it blows it up to full screen. I don't want it full screen. Now, everybody, welcome to the show. I just wanted to say, hey, Vikings faithful, buckle up and grab your purple Kool-Aid because the Minnesota Vikings have finally decided to do something mildly interesting in this snooze fest of a free agency period. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, your beloved franchise has gone out and signed the one and only, the diminutive one, Kyler Murray. Former number 1 pick overall, perpetual injury report regular, and now officially the FNG. And for those that don't know, that stands for freaking new guy. And I censored the word freaking because it's not that. On a glorious 1-year, $1.3 million veteran minimum deal. Because nothing says we're all in for 2026 like letting Arizona continue to pay the most of the tab, while we prefer this bold as a bold move. So now we've got the FNG strutting into the QB room to, quote, compete with JJ McCarthy, who apparently needs all the help he can get after last year's thrilling display of pocket presence, decision-making, and questionable coaching. Meanwhile, Kyler gets to sling it to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hockenson under the watchful eye of that questionable coach, Kevin O'Connell, who's probably already dreaming of highlight reels that might save his job. It's basically free upside. Or a hilarious disaster waiting to happen. Either way, popcorn's on us. That and more on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock! Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. And here we are. Next to me is the second pair of two old bloggers, Darren Campbell. How's the Great White North, buddy?
It's fine. Sunday. Trying to get the Sunday blues out of the way because I know I got to go to work tomorrow. The weekend's over, but just enjoying this time of the year when hope springs eternal in the NFL for all teams.
Are things greening up there?
No. That'll be May.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious. I've already mowed once, not going to mow again. But we get winter here starting tomorrow morning for the next 48 hours, and then we'll be back to spring. Hopefully it's the final winter of the season, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I want to welcome everybody that's watching today. We've got Nick, we've got Drewster, we've got Doc Brodo, we've got Mr. Bob Swede. Hi, Bob. And we've got Raymond. We've got a whole bunch of people in here. The Northfius, of course. And George, good to see you. Yes, FNG. You got that right. And anybody else that I may have missed, I apologize. Bulldog LLC, good to see you. I'm way behind on the comments, but it's all good to see everybody here. Anthony, good. Now, today we started to talk about the FNG. The biggest story of the week. The Minnesota Vikings signed Kyler Murray to compete for the number 1 job at quarterback. I guess it's time to get into it. In theme 1, If I can find the right button.
So many buttons, so little time.
I know.
Look at that.
I had to do that for free agency, so let's see how it goes.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think we kind of the intro, Dave, is a lot splashier than the Vikings' actual first week of free agency, for sure. But yeah, we'll get into the Kyler Murray thing. But Dave, I don't know about you, but this week felt like the quietest Vikings first week of free agency I can remember in a long time.
It reminds me of some of the Spielman years, where we go in there and just do absolutely, basically nothing. Taking a key from the Green Bay Packers that tend to do nothing. And
the Packers are very consistent, from the Ted Thompson to Gutekunst. Their draft and develop will get like the odd free agency guy, maybe one big signing to help us that we think can help us, but mostly they're just like, we're just next man up. We're going to promote the guy we picked in the 5th round to that position and let other teams take the free agents that we don't want to pay for and don't think are better than the guys that are already on our squad. So, but getting a little off topic, but yeah, pretty slow first week of free agency, Dave, the quietest I can remember in a long time, like you said. But having said that, the number one priority coming into this free agency, Dave, at least I thought so, was the Vikings had to get, and they were going to have to do it likely in free agency. It had to get a veteran quarterback to come in and wink, wink, nudge, nudge, compete with J.J. McCarthy for the starting job. And on Thursday, the Vikings did that. The news came out. Kyler Murray came in and visited Minnesota. He didn't leave Minnesota. He signs a 1-year, $1.3 million vet minimum deal. And so there you have it. Kyler Murray is a Viking. Of course, Vikings fans got a Viking, right? So people are going to complain about this. And
really?
and everybody, no matter, we said it before, no matter who the Vikings brought in free agency as a veteran guy at quarterback, there were going to be flaws you could pick at. And I'm sure you've heard them all about Kyler Murray by now. He hasn't played under center very much at the NFL level. He can't throw deep anymore. He doesn't like throwing in sort of between the numbers in the intermediate area. That's not a strength of his. He's had trouble staying healthy the past 2 or 3 years. He's not a leader. He's not a film, a film session aficionado, a grinder, maybe that sort of stuff. He's never won anything at the NFL level or at the college level. All of those things you've probably heard. Some of them might have a bit of truth to them. But I still feel that Kyler Murray, the Vikings signing Kyler Murray, they got the best quarterback who was available on the market on Thursday. Yeah, we would have loved Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, but those guys were not available.
Well, now, I was sort of expecting with them trying to free up all that cap space that they'd make a run on Burrow. And maybe they called, maybe they didn't. Just, if they called, they got told no.
Yeah, I don't think the Bengals are interested, as they shouldn't be. I wouldn't be interested in trading Joe Burrow either if I didn't have to. But I said that Kyler Murray, I think he was the best quarterback available in free agency that the Vikings could bring in. Now, some people might say, hey, what about Daniel Jones? I wouldn't agree with them if they said that Daniel Jones was a better option than Kyler Murray, but you could make an argument for that, I guess. But hey, when you talk about value for money, and we talked about this heading into free agency, to get Kyler Murray, who's been a top 10 quarterback consistently in his 7 years in the NFL, maybe a little bit lower than that at times, but he's been top 10 2 or 3 seasons at least. To get him to come in, a veteran guy with a ton of talent like he has, for $1.3 million for 1 year, I think that's great value for money. And I think that, who's going to have a better shot at outperforming their contract? Kyler Murray at $1.3 million in 1 year, or Daniel Jones, who just signed a 2-year, $88 million contract with the Colts. I think it's pretty clear that Kyler Murray's the guy that's going to outperform that if he's healthy at all in 2026. And, if Kyler Murray plays at the level that we have seen him play several of his 7 years in the NFL, Dave, if he plays just at that level, or he plays at like the level that Sam Darnold played in 2024 with the Vikings, this could turn out to be like the best value signing in NFL history. And the Vikings will have got him. So, I think that the Vikings had to do something here at quarterback to bring in a veteran, and I think they got the best veteran guy that they could get. And so, could it go wrong for the Vikings? It's the Vikings. So of
course it can.
Of course it can go wrong. But, I think when you're looking at Kyler Murray, and he wanted to be here, it looks like, Dave. Like, this was his first visit he made. He didn't leave Minnesota. I think that almost indicates to me that this had been set up at the combine in Indianapolis, that the Vikings knew that.
Are you saying they tampered?
No. Would never say that, Dave. That did not happen. But anyway, but he wanted to be here. And there's a lot of compelling reasons to think that Kyler Murray is going to thrive in Minnesota because, hey, he's getting out of Arizona. He's going to be throwing to Justin Jefferson. He's going to be playing for a head coach who has shown in the past that he can get the very best out of veteran quarterbacks like Kirk Cousins, like Sam Darnold, like even Nick Mullins. He's got an offensive line that, if it's healthy, I think is going to be the best he's played in front of him. So I think there's a lot of reasons to think that this is going to work out, that this is a great opportunity for Kyler Murray, and it could work out really well for him and work out really well for the Vikings. It may not work out well, but as far as bets goes, I like this bet that the Vikings have made. And, me talking about Kyler Murray coming here, obviously I'm feeling that Kyler Murray is going to be the starter in 2026, even though Kevin O'Connell did not commit to that in his press availability on Thursday. And even though Kyler Murray danced around that question when he was asked about it too during his press availability on Thursday. But I don't see how it turns out any other way. Dave, I think it really, Murray would have to be totally, blow it. And JJ McCarthy would have to show like a massive amount of a leap in his play compared to his 2025 season for that to happen. So I'm thinking Kyler Murray is going to be the starter, which leads us to the other question of the whole domino on this is like, what does this say about JJ McCarthy's future for the Vikings? Clearly, he's in a much different, his status with the Vikings is much different than it was 12 months ago when he was pretty much the unquestioned guy who was going to be starting. The Vikings had turned it over to him. They let Sam Darnold walk to Seattle, all that stuff. But for JJ McCarthy, Dave, I think, the best play for him right now is shut your mouth, work as hard as you possibly can to improve yourself as a player. And that's what he appears to be doing when he's in California with John Beck, working out with that quarterback guru. And, for JJ McCarthy, start working on the things that you struggled with last year. And with JJ McCarthy, when you look at Kyler Murray, Dave, and the injury issues he's had the past 2 or 3 seasons, there is a decent chance that JJ McCarthy, he'll be mostly standing on the sidelines, but there's a pretty decent chance that he will actually have to play and start some games in 2026. And so if that happens, he's got to be ready. He's got to be sharp when he plays. And if he does that, plus with the tape he's going to put on in preseason, and I expect he'll play a fair bit in preseason, unlike last preseason when he barely played at all. I think that if he puts on that good tape, does the sort of the shows, has Malik Willis type performances if he plays in 2026, he's going to be able to rebuild his reputation either with the Vikings or amongst other NFL teams, that he still has the goods to be a starter. Because I think, even with all the criticisms and the tough year that JJ McCarthy had last year, Dave, we still saw at times the ability of like the moxie he showed, that it factor that you talk about, Dave, at times, that he has, and some other attributes that show that, he might have what it takes to be a very good starting quarterback in the NFL. It's just going to take time. And so whatever playing opportunities he gets in 2026, whether it be in preseason and the regular season, Dave, he's just got to put his best foot forward and show that he's improved on the things that he struggled with, like, handle pocket pressure better, change your play style a little bit so you don't put yourself at risk of too much injury. Show that you've got the ability to handle being a leader off the field a little bit better. Also show that you can put some touch on passes and you don't throw fastballs 100% of the time. If he can do that, he can rebuild his career, which looks like it's a little bit in jeopardy. And remember, in January 2027, Dave, he will just turn 24 years old. So he's still a pup. There's still a chance for him to rewrite his story in the NFL, even though people are down on him now. And depending on how he does in 2026, if he gets to play, and depending on how things go with Kyler Murray, Dave, the Vikings could be left with, pretty two, I think, appealing things that come out of it. Say the Kyler Murray experience doesn't go well in 2026, but J.J. McCarthy, through injury or whatever, and J.J. McCarthy does get to play, and he plays fairly well in those games. The Vikings might decide, well, we're not going to stick with Murray, but we've seen enough growth from J.J. McCarthy that we think that he is the guy that we thought he was in 2024, and we give him a shot to be the starter in 2027. That's one outcome of what's happened here. The other outcome is that even J.J. McCarthy he plays well, but so does Kyler Murray, and he takes the Vikings to an 11-win season or better. They make the playoffs. They're a Super Bowl contender, and the Vikings decide that, hey, Kyler Murray is it. We want to keep him. We're going to sign him to an extension. Then at least J.J. McCarthy, if he gets to play and he plays well in 2026, whatever that is, preseason, a few regular season games, he will have, I think, shown enough that teams will be interested in acquiring him. And then the Vikings can trade him for some draft capital, and much higher than they'd be able to trade for him now. So, I think the Vikings, with those two scenarios, I think you'd rather, the latter, where Kyler Murray really works out and he becomes your long-term guy, even though he's going to be more expensive. But if either one of those things happen, J.J. McCarthy shows that he can be the guy and you keep him, or he shows he could be the guy and you can trade him, I don't think the Vikings would be too upset about either of those scenarios coming to fruition in 2026. So again, J.J. McCarthy, I think he's got time to rebuild his career to show he can be a starter in the NFL. Does it happen in Minnesota? To be determined. But again, I like the Murray signing. Dave, wondering what you think about it all.
Well, everybody should know how much of a fan of J.J. McCarthy I am. Yes. And I do think the kid has a bright, bright future. I hope it's with Minnesota and he takes us to the Super Bowl. But I didn't originally like this signing at all. Throw out the cost. The cost is overwhelmingly in favor of Kyler Murray. You can get somebody on $1.3 million, a vet minimum, that would normally get $50 million. No, that's just pure genius bonus. It would have been stupid for the Vikings not to go that route. If it is a competition, which I don't believe it's going to be, I hope it's fair. It's not going to be, folks. It's not whatsoever. I looked at Kyler Murray's stats, from deep throwing to all the different stuff, from how he started in the Kingsbury air raid offense and did well, and then switched to a more modern offense and it did not so well, i.e. the Warren Sharp stats. His best year was obviously 2021. Well, 2021 was 5 years ago. Well, he's in his prime. He's still under 30. So I wanted to look at other stats to see why he didn't. Now, in the run-up to 2021 and 2022, he had some great wide receivers. After that, wide receivers went to because Arizona's garbage for running a team. They do not know how to instill a winning culture down there. Whereas you can argue Minnesota does. Quasi, let's see. But it came down to one stat. We saw J.J. McCarthy overthrow and misthrow on a bunch of balls last year. He's young. We know his mechanics are off. We know he's got an arm. That's without doubt. He's got an arm. But he needs work. That's obviously the offseason working with Coach Beck. Now, and I do hope he comes back all fixed and it is a true competition, but I don't think it's going to be. Road SKOL says he had a good year in 24. It was better. Yes, it was. But I looked at one thing that makes this a valuable trade, and it comes to accuracy. Accuracy is tracked by Pro Football, Pro Football Focus, Pro Football Reference, the whole works. This kid is number 5 in the history of the NFL, the most accurate passer over the 7 years. Number 5. J.J. McCarthy wasn't even close. Wasn't even in the same room. Now, what does J.J. McCarthy, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hockenson want? They want to know that the ball can get to them where it's supposed to get to them. Hey there, Ruby. When they need it. Now, will he do that? He should. His throwing percentage for accuracy percentage has not gone down. And you can't beat that accuracy. And I think that accuracy is what's going to vault him to the starting job, even from the get-go. He's going to take some while to learn the offense. I think he's going to get a crash course. He's probably already got the playbook from KOC, and he's probably already hears from him on a text, multiple times a day, even though they, quote, can't, communicate. I'm sure it's already started. And we're going to see the diminutive one, and that's what I call him. He's listed as, quote, 5'10". I don't believe that, but okay. But short guys have been good quarterbacks. They've reached the Hall of Fame. Hey, Fran Tarkenton was, 5'11"?
Maybe.
And he's got a lot of that ability, the scramble. And that's something J.J. McCarthy has as well. I think just he's got better. And it hurts me to say that I think this is the better choice to start, and we will see. I sort of feel like Rich Eisen. And as much as Rich Eisen absolutely loves J.J. McCarthy, Rich Eisen on his show said, no, the better choice is, right now, Kyler Murray. And I agree with him. J.J. McCarthy isn't going to disappear from the NFL. Heck, you got the kid from North Dakota State who's making, come on, David, forget the name, is making $5 million more a year. So and I'm not talking Wentz, I'm talking the one that was considered a bust that San Francisco drafted.
Trey Lance.
Trey Lance, yes. And J.J. McCarthy is probably going to have a long and fruitful NFL career. Now, is it with the Vikings? It could start this season because both have injury histories. J.J. McCarthy has had 5 documented injuries in his 2 years, whereas Kyler has 4 and is 7. Now, we will see if those injuries pop up again this year. There was problems after he tore his ACL. He never seemed to fully overcome that. He basically has, but it was rough, and makes you wonder. So I don't think he's played a full season since then. So there's going to be times when JJ gets to come in. Now, is JJ going to take what he's learned and stand out? I hope so, because this is just a 1-year contract. He has a no-trade clause, a no-tag clause. So he will be, Kyler, that is, will be a free agent at the end of this year, at the end of the 2026 season. If he goes off to get a big payday, which is what he's hoping for, the Vikings will be with J.J. McCarthy. And hopefully J.J. McCarthy comes in when he's injured or whatever and just blows the socks off of everybody. And we're all happy that we're sticking with J.J. McCarthy. If not, and Kyler Murray takes us to dreamland, at least deep in the playoffs, then we give him a big contract. And then we trade J.J. McCarthy. I don't know how it's going to work out. All I can say is I love J.J. McCarthy, but I think the best right now to go with is Kyler Murray. But no matter what it is, I tell the fans or suggest to the fans, enjoy the ride. Because you know this season is going to be wild. It's absolutely going to be wild. So enjoy the ride, because it is that story as it unfolds that's going to be so fun for us to report on, hopefully, versus a chore. And that it is, one of those miraculous seasons, be it like Brett Favre in 2009. Hopefully it doesn't end that way that causes Kyler Murray to cry. But hey, it is what it is. And Minnesota Marshmallow says KOC isn't even a playoff winning coach. Yeah, you're right. He's not for the Vikings. Not a head coach. He's obviously been and won a Super Bowl as other positions coaching. But we're going to see. This is going to be the year. KOC's on the hot seat. Kyler Murray's playing for a contract. J.J. McCarthy's going to try to beat him out. It's going to be fun to watch. And fans like to argue about it, but why? Let's just watch. It's you can come back, here in 9 months and go, yeah, see, I was right. Or see, you were wrong. You didn't know shit. Well, I admit that. I've only been tracking this team since I was 6. So what do I know? But it is what it is. So it's going to be a fun season. And Kyler Murray is going to be part of that. So we might as well get used to it. It is what it is. And also, he does better when he has a better offensive line. That's the other research I've done. And when he has a better offensive line, most quarterbacks do better. And I think this year's offensive line will be just fine. But that's how I feel.
Yeah, and I appreciate the comments from everybody in the chat. They've been coming in fast and furious. A lot of people have strong opinions about Kyler Murray or JJ McCarthy or both. And I think there's a lot of people who feel like the Vikings are always never committing to a quarterback, and they've done it again by bringing in Kyler Murray after just 10 starts with JJ McCarthy. And I understand that. I just feel that if you're Kevin O'Connell and Kevin O'Connell's situation, and we don't know what the Wilfs told him about, like, what's expected of him and the Vikings in 2026. They're kind of like, hey, you guys better repeat. You better turn things around compared to how things went in 2025, because we spent a lot of money and we didn't get anywhere with J.J. McCarthy as a starter. We need a better plan B, and Kyler Murray is actually plan A right now, not plan B. And if I was in Kevin O'Connell's situation, there's no way I'm running it back with J.J. McCarthy after what I saw last year. As much as I believe in him, with my job potentially being on the line, I have to bring in somebody who at least could challenge him for the starting job. And I think in this case, they've got somebody who's not going to, is better than J.J. McCarthy right now. Maybe 6 years down the road, things are a lot different. And yes, Dave, Drew, I agree. We should get rid of the QB whisperer things with Kevin O'Connell, although he didn't call himself a QB whisperer. It was people in the media,
the press.
Yeah, the press that gave him that. Although he didn't back away from that either.
Mm-hmm. And I want to agree with Aaron, who said, we are so confident we don't even have a punter. That's the way to go, Aaron. We're talking about quarterbacks, and you bring up that we have a hole in the punting situation, and we'll get to that because it's programmed on this show.
It is.
Now, speaking of which, it's time to move on to theme 2. Theme 2.
Sticking with free agency.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are. And if I hit the button right, come on.
Oh, the anticipation.
I know. And why isn't it showing? Come on, load, you piece of junk. There we go.
Oh.
Free agency. I know the volume's low, but there's crickets in the background.
Which kind of sums up the first week of free agency for the Vikings, Dave, in a lot of ways. We talked about in our first theme, started off talking about how it's been a quiet, really kind of dull first week of free agency for the Vikings. They mostly have brought back guys, re-signed guys that were on the team in last season. Other than Kyler Murray, the only player outside of the organization that they have brought in is this guy, James Pierre, the former cornerback with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So not a whole lot of excitement for Vikings fans there. However, the Vikings have been active in free agency, mostly signing their own guys. And we just wanted to kind of look at who are the winners on the Vikings organization, in the Vikings organization, and who are the losers after the first week of free agency. Wanted to take a look at that with Rob and the whole free agency thing, Dave. I think I was surprised by how frugal the Vikings have been so far. I think we expected a bit more. We didn't expect what happened in 2025 or even 2024 to occur, but we thought that they would be a little bit more proactive than they have been. And but the thing is, we don't know, but it looks pretty clear that Rob Brzezinski, as the interim general manager, he had a plan in place for what the Vikings were going to do in free agency. And that plan likely was either given to him by the Wilfs, or they at least agreed to the plan so far. And that plan was going to be that the Vikings were, again, going to mostly sit out the first week of free agency and not spend a whole lot of bucks that they didn't have on this, high-profile guy or that high-profile guy. Instead, we watched a lot of those guys go to the Raiders and the Giants and Carolina and a lot of other teams, but not the Vikings. So there you have it. But looking at the winners and the losers for Vikings free agency so far. First winner is Kyler Murray. We touched on this a bit in the theme 1, but Murray's a winner because he signs with the Vikings, but he's still getting paid the $38 million that the Cardinals owe him, and the Vikings are only paying $1.3 million of that. So he's still getting paid what he was going to get paid anyway. He's away from a rebuilding Arizona team that is not going to be competitive in 2026. So that's a win for him. He's going to get to throw to.
You're not saying Mendoza's going to take him to the Super Bowl his rookie season?
No, that's not happening, Dave. I feel quite confident in that. So he's away from the rebuilding organization. Mendoza's not going to be there anyway. He's going to be the Raiders.
That's true. He's going to be a Raider.
But so he's gone there. He's going to be thrown to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. So that's all good. Also, with the way the contract is worked for Kyler Murray, the Vikings can't transition or franchise tag him after this season. So he's set to be a free agent no matter what happens. And that tees him up. If he has a really good 2026 season, in line with some of his better years or even better, he's going to be in for another big payday, either from the Vikings or some other NFL team. So that's a win for Kyler Murray. And he's playing for a coach who's, I talked about earlier, has been able to get really good play out of veteran quarterbacks like Kirk Cousins, like Sam Darnold, like even Nick Mullins, like even Josh Dobbs for a short amount of time. So I think Kyler Murray, compared to the way things were,
quarterback whisperer because of it by the press.
By the press. So compared to how things were 2 or 3 weeks ago, Kyler Murray, I think, is coming out feeling pretty good about where things are right now in 2026 for him. So he's a winner. I think another winner is, several winners here, is anybody who caught passes or was going to catch passes for the Vikings in 2026. Pretty clear, Dave, last year that with particularly J.J. McCarthy and Max Brosmer, they started 12 of the 17 Vikings games last year. They really struggled completing passes consistently to guys like Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hockenson. And that really impacted those guys' production. Like the way McCarthy and Brosmer in particular played at times, they made completing a pass feel like a huge accomplishment some games. And again, so who does that impact the most? The guys that catches passes. And we saw the production of all those guys go way, way down compared to what we've seen from them so many, in the previous seasons. So they've got to feel really good about the fact that Kyler Murray, a veteran who has shown that he can play really good football in the NFL, is now on your team and likely going to be your starter. So they're definitely wins. And if Kyler Murray is the starter for the Vikings in 2026, as I think he will be, Dave, we can expect that the production of Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hockenson is going to go back to the way it had been previously when Cousins was throwing them the ball and Darnold was throwing them the ball. They're winners. Another winner, I think, out of this free agency so far is Ty Felton.
Ooh. Graphics, but no, okay. Ty Felton.
That's not Ty Felton, but we'll get to him eventually. You got so many buttons.
There we go.
There's Ty. We know last year he barely played during the regular season. He mostly was a special teams guy, but so far right now, and the Vikings have lost Jalen Naylor as expected, signed with the Las Vegas Raiders. He was our number 3 guy, no longer with the organization.
Doesn't he look happy at his press conference?
You couldn't find one where he was smiling. well, Las Vegas is actually his hometown. So anyway, I would be happy
where he's smiling, but yes. Yeah.
Anyway, Jalen Naylor is no longer in the building, and the Vikings so far haven't signed any veteran wide receiver free agents in free agency to potentially be the number 3 guy. There's some intriguing veteran names out there: Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel, Keenan Allen is out there. There's Jawan Jennings is still available, who I really would like the Vikings to sign. So there's a few guys out there. Even Stephon Diggs is available, Dave. I kind of get the feeling that either some of these guys are either probably out of the Vikings price range with the way they're attacking free agency right now, or if they aren't out of their price range, the Vikings feel that they're a little washed. Deebo Samuel, and they're not interested in those guys. I think they will sign a veteran wide receiver at some point in time over the next 2 or 3 weeks who will be able to compete for number 3. But as of right now, Ty Felton is the odds-on favorite to be the number 3 wide receiver for the Vikings in 2026. And I kind of feel like that shouldn't be a big shocker because the Vikings did pick him with the first. He was picked 97th overall last year. The comp pick that we got for Kirk Cousins, that was Ty Felton. And that was, and he was a guy who we viewed would be, he'd need a year of seasoning, but working with Keenan McCardell and a year learning the NFL game, he would be in line to be perhaps the number 3 guy when Jalen Nader left, as we expected he would, and he has left. So Felton's not like some scrub. He caught over 90 passes his last year at Maryland, and he was used a lot in 3 of his 4 seasons at Maryland. So this kid has talent. He's very fast. And again, right now, he's the odds-on favorite to be the number 3 wide receiver on an offense that now looks like it's going to have Kyler Murray throwing the ball. So I'd definitely say Ty Felton's a winner so far in free agency.
Okay. Just be advised, I've got tornado sirens going off.
Ooh. That ain't good.
No. We've got a storm front moving through. Yeah. And it's no, it's not. But as long as if we go off the air, it's because I've lost power, and we'll try to get back on as soon as possible.
Yeah. I better hurry up. Final winner from free agency is Eric Wilson. If you watch the show, you know that I was not in favor of the Vikings re-signing Eric Wilson because of his age, and I didn't think he'd be able to repeat the outstanding year he had last year. But I did also feel that the Vikings were going to bring him back. And I just hoped at the time, Dave, that the Vikings wouldn't re-sign him for too many years and too much money. So what happens? The Vikings re-sign him for a 3-year deal at $22.5 million, which isn't quite what I was hoping for, but only $12.5 million of that is guaranteed. And it looks very much like that the way the contract's set up when I looked it over the cap, that Wilson's a prime candidate to get released in 2027. If after the 2027 season, if things, if he loses, if he starts to fall off a cliff. But hey, Eric Wilson, at 31 years old, that's an age where a lot of NFL players are already, their careers are done. Eric Wilson gets the best payday of his entire career at age 31, and he's going to be starter. Again, he's set up to be a starting inside linebacker for what should be a very good defense in 2026. So there'd be 2 straight years where he'd be a starter in a career where he's mostly been a backup and a special teams guy. So right now, I'd say Eric Wilson is a winner from free agency for the Vikings.
I agree. Now, just to let folks know, my studio is in my basement.
So you're safe.
I'm safe. The only thing I'm worried about is losing internet or power. Either one is going to take us
Hopefully
down.
You don't. Hopefully, in a half an hour, you don't walk upstairs and your whole
is missing.
Yeah, the rest of the house is missing.
I just heard Katie open the back door, so she's out looking for the tornado.
It's live, folks. It's live.
She grew up in North Dakota and knows to look. And as long as the sky is normal and it doesn't turn green, you're probably pretty good. And the sirens just are unwinding. Cool. So that's what you get for living near St. Louis.
St. Louis is lovely, I hear.
It is for the most part.
Yeah. Let's get to the losers of free agency.
Okay.
Obvious loser is Mr. McCarthy. We also talked about that in theme 1. And again, his standing in the Vikings organization looks a lot different now than it did this time last year. And if you're JJ McCarthy, you're kind of like, he's going to go from a guy, he's likely going to be standing on the sidelines most of this season instead of being in the middle of the huddle running the offense like he was last season. That's got to be quite a jarring, situation for a guy that this age who's always succeeded at every level of football he's ever played in. And I think and you kind of wonder for him that how does he feel about how the Vikings were blowing smoke up his ass for two seasons about how he was the franchise guy. I wonder how he feels about how things have transpired here in the past few weeks and months, where I wonder if he believes what the Vikings were telling him the previous 2 years and whether that's playing on his mind any. But, to go from a starter in the NFL to a guy could be nailed to the bench in 2026 because you brought in somebody from outside the organization in free agency. And at this time, and he doesn't get a chance, at least right now, to prove that he's really improved on how he played in 2025. He's a loser so far from the free agency. And I don't disagree with what the Vikings did, but still for him, he's not come out a winner so far in free agency. Another loser, I feel, is special teams coordinator Matt Daniels. And for some strange reason, some Vikings fans wanted Daniels fired during the season, after the season. I actually thought the Vikings special teams was the best it's been in the whole time he's been the special teams coordinator, which has been since 2022. Will Reichert had a great year. Ryan White had a great year punting the ball. A couple of high-profile mistakes in coverage, but overall, the punt and kickoff coverage was solid all year. And he's a guy who I believe identified Miles Price as a guy to pick up as an undrafted rookie free agent, and had faith in him to be the guy who would carry the load on returning punts and kickoffs. And Price was a dynamic guy in that role in 2025. So I think Matt Daniels did a lot of good things last year, but now they lost Ryan Wright in free agency. And I did not see this one coming, Dave, at all. And I certainly didn't see him signing a 4-year deal with the Saints for $14 million, which I think is pretty rich for a punter. And did the Vikings want to lose Ryan Wright? I know, but I also think with the salary cap situation that they had and the be frugal in this free agent period this year, I don't think they were interested in getting into a bidding war with the Saints or any other team for Wright services. So they made a choice to let him go. It didn't match the Saints' price or better it, but and now they got to come up with a guy to replace Ryan Wright, who was excellent last year. And Wright and Will Reichard, Wright's an important part of that Reichard to Paula, whole Reichard field goal operation with him being the holder. They got to find somebody else that can do that job right now, and that's not easy to do. So the Vikings special teams got worse this week because they lost Ryan Wright, and now Matt Daniels has to find a replacement for Ryan Wright, and we don't know who that is right now. So Matt Daniels, a bit of a loser in free agency. The final loser in free agency was, Dave, all of us who were looking for a little excitement in free agency, because I've always looked at free agency as like Christmas coming in March for football fans, because, you get excited about thinking about the players the Vikings are going to sign. And when they do sign them, then you start getting excited about how those players are going to perform in Minnesota and how they're going to help us get to a Super Bowl and all of that stuff. And so this week, we're signing Andrew DePaula, we're re-signing Aaron Jones, we're re-signing Tavir Thomas. Those aren't the moves that get you excited as a Vikings fan. Fortunately, the Kyler Murray signing saved the week a bit and gave us a bit of jolt of excitement. But overall, this week has been, again, pretty quiet and pretty dull. But that doesn't need to be a bad thing in a way, Dave. We saw what the Vikings did in 2025 in particular. It, even though those players weren't complete busts, it didn't work out the way we expected it to. And we talked about in free agency last week about how the Vikings weren't going to be able to spend as much as they had the previous 2 off seasons. They needed to find, more, they need to find good value for money, diamonds in the rough. And that philosophy, that plan might end up actually working better for the Vikings in 2026 than the free agent spending spree we went on in 2025. Remains to be seen, but not all is lost just because the Vikings weren't big players in free agency this year.
Yes. So now I'm putting up Eric Wilson, Aaron Jones, Andrew DePaula, Tavir Thomas, Greenard. We'll find out. So you still have Andrew Van Ginkel. We still have Will Fries. We still have Ryan. Well, we don't have Ryan Kelly. He retired. But to your point, it seems like Ebenezer Scrooge has taken over this free agency. But that's okay. we knew that we had overspent last year, and this year they're trying to make up for it. I still think we have a good set of bones for this team.
I agree.
And we've got a good roster overall. Now, are there any pending massive holes we got to fill? Actually, I'm not so sure. Now, can we hit some of them in the draft? I hope we do. And I hope we build up that depth. That's the main thing I'm looking forward to in the draft, is build up that depth. But we have starters at each position so far. So we'll find out. This may be an Ebenezer Scrooge sort of story, but what happens to Ebenezer Scrooge?
He sees the light, Dave.
He does. And maybe that happens with the Wilfs and the Vikings fans and everybody else, and everything will turn out to be wonderful. We'll find out.
It could be. Could be.
Mm-hmm. So, we're done with theme 2, which was a long one. What comes after theme 2?
Theme 3, David.
And for this one, come on. I hit the right button.
Technology.
This week in Vikings land.
Yes. There we go. Get us pumped up.
Yes, I hope to. And if you want to re-see that, this week in Vikings land. All right.
Yes.
It all starts off with Kyler Murray, of course.
Yeah. Dave was joking before the show and on there. I'm running out of pictures of Murray. I talk about him so much in this show.
I can only take so many screenshots of a press conference.
Yeah,
so
true enough. I gotta get off. Yeah, so Murray, leading off with Murray again because of free agency. We talked about how Murray was one of 2 guys outside the organization the Vikings have signed so far in free agency. Only 2. The other one is James Pierre, who we mentioned earlier in the show as well. Was with the Steelers for 6 seasons, now is a Viking. And so who is James Pierre, you might be asking, if you haven't already looked into it. He's a guy that I did not, when we went over the cornerback room, the secondary room a few weeks ago, Dave, in our positional analysis, he was not one of the guys I mentioned that should be on the Vikings radar for free agency. Even though I did say that the Vikings, they're probably looking for a guy, again, an undervalued guy, a guy that maybe isn't going to be a starter and be willing to take a role in the team as your number 3 cornerback who's not playing full time. Well, Pierre fit that to a T but during that look at potential targets in free agency the Vikings might have at cornerback, Dave, I didn't take into account the fact that the Vikings had just signed Gerald Alexander to be the secondary coach. And he's a guy who for 3 seasons at 2 different times had that exact job with the Steelers. So he has coached and knows Pierre very well and knows what he's capable of doing and his strengths and his weaknesses. So I should have paid more attention to Pierre, who was going to be hitting the free agent market. The Vikings certainly paid attention to him. And when you look at it a little bit, Pierre seems to be an interesting player, Dave. Pro Football Focus had him graded out of 114 cornerbacks who played at least 300 snaps last year. They graded him 2nd in the league. The only guy who was graded better was Devin Witherspoon from the Seahawks, and we know how good Witherspoon is as a cover corner. A small sample size for sure, but Pierre played well when he did play last year. 9 pass breakups, only allowed 14 completions on 33 passes thrown his way. Quarterbacks only had a combined 52.8 quarterback rating when targeting him. So those are pretty fat, nice numbers for a cornerback, Dave. The only thing is, of course, that he has never played more than 38% of the defensive snaps in the NFL, and that was last year with the Steelers. So he hasn't played a lot. You don't know if he gets more playing time, would he be able to keep up that level of play that he showed in 2025? But we also know that Brian Flores doesn't use three cornerbacks a ton compared to other teams. He likes to use three safeties, but three corners not as much. Last year they had signed Jeff Okudah, the former top 5 pick. They talked him up, greatly during the offseason and training camp. And then when the games started, Okudah, they barely played him. He played like 93 defensive snaps in the 8 games that he was healthy, and then he got injured with the concussion. He was on injured reserve and never played again. But he didn't work out. But, I think even though Flores doesn't use three corners a lot so far, in 2024, he used Shaq Griffin quite a bit. 572 defensive snaps, 50% of the defensive snaps, and he was the number 3 corner, and they used him a lot. And so I think you can view James Pierre as being Brian Flores' Shaq Griffin in 2026. And again, last year he had a very strong year. I don't know what his grades were in previous years, but he plays a lot of special teams as well, which has value for the Vikings. He plays a ton of special teams, but I think, again, with the Vikings in free agency, with the salary cap being what it was, with the strategy that they have employed so far in free agency, where they're not spending a whole lot of money, again, they had to find guys that they could get, that were undervalued, that they could provide good value for money. And Pierre was signed for a 2-year deal for, I think, $6.5 million or something like that. So when you look at Pierre's stats last year with the Steelers, he's 29, so he's still I think. But he's not somebody who I think will fall off a cliff next season. I think this is a signing that could turn out to be sneaky good for the Vikings, and where they found a diamond in the rough. Not a guy they're expecting to play 1,000 defensive snaps, but he could play 500, and he could play really good 500 defensive snaps. Something Jeff Okudah could not provide last year.
Nope, not at all. So I think this is a good signing, very much like our cornerback last year. I think it is. I like this. And to be cornerback 3, I'm happy with this. I think this was a good signing. So we'll find out. He's relatively young. He's under 30. But we'll see.
And I don't think that signing Pierre, I don't think that should stop the Vikings from drafting a corner early. No. In this draft either, because Isaiah Rodgers is only signed in, he'd be a free agent in 2026 unless the Vikings extend him during the season or re-sign him at the end of the season. But
Adamantium says the cornerback coach from Pittsburgh too, Pierre plays nickel package. Well, that's what we expect. He'll come in as CB3 and Murphy will move inside the nickel, and all will be good.
And what I've read is that Pierre is he's equally good at playing man and zone, which I think is important. But Flores has played a ton of zone since he's been in Minnesota since 2023. But I think part of the reason he's done that is because the personalities had it. That's what he felt that they were best at, or they'd be least exposed in playing zone. I think he also likes playing zone because it keeps your eyes on the quarterback. And with so many quarterbacks now being able to be dual threats and being able to run, when you play too much man, that leaves you open to the guy scrambling 10, 20 yards down the field and nobody's touched them yet. So, but I think I am interested to see how Pierre does for us, because again, I think the price we got him for, he could turn out to be a great value signing for us.
I agree. Lorenzo asks about J.J. McCarthy's 5th-year option. We'll get into that at the end of the season, I'm sure. So we'll find out. Yes, it'll be at least 5 times more than Kyler. But Kyler at the end of the season next year is going to be a $50 million plus quarterback, most likely. So we'll find out. Now to the next topic.
Yeah, well,
Schefter.
No, it's not about Schefter, really, but
it's not.
it was about over a week ago that Schefter put out the tweet that the Vikings were open to trading Jonathan Greenard, which was a surprise to me and a lot of other Vikings fans, because we're like, why would you be open to trading Greenard? He's one of your best players. And, you're not rebuilding, so why would you want to trade the guy? Yeah, you got Dallas Turner who can step in for him at starter, but then you only got Turner and Van Ginkel as your edge guys, and if one of them gets hurt, who's coming in to replace them? Right. Nobody. So it was a bit of a head scratcher, but then we also found out that Greenard's looking for perhaps a significant pay increase, and the Vikings, with the salary cap situation they have right now, might not be able to live with that pay increase. So at that point, if you don't think you can pay him what he wants, and you don't want him around if he's unhappy with his pay, you got to look at trading him. And he does have I think a significant amount of value as a quality edge rusher in the NFL. But we also started hearing after that came out that the Vikings were looking at, that at least the drop dead value they were looking for is that they wouldn't take him for less than a second rounder. And then plus. Vikings fans, yeah, they take a first rounder, but they're not going to trade him if somebody is offering a third or a fourth for him or something.
Or fifth round, blow ball, whatever. No.
But that second rounder, some Vikings fans got upset because they're like, what do you mean? Like, why would you trade him for a second rounder? I mean, Greenard is much better than that. He's worth much more than that. And I get all of that. But here we are.
One of the BS post links. Trade Greenard plus this scrub and a fifth rounder. Who's for that? Who says yes? All those sort of no.
But here we are over a week since that came out, and Greenard is still a Viking, and I'm fine with that. I actually don't want the Vikings to trade Greenard because I think we could really use him. He's an excellent player, and he'd leave a big hole if he were to get traded. But so I hope it doesn't happen. But if it did, I want to throw something out there for people. Scenario. We know that the Vikings, again, they'd accept a second rounder for Greenard, apparently. But what if the Vikings traded Greenard for a first rounder in 2027? How would you feel about that? The cons, or the one con to it is that you wouldn't get any compensation for Greenard this year. So you wouldn't get somebody who can help you this year and potentially replace what you're losing in Greenard. That's the con. But the pros to it, Dave, are that you're getting a first rounder instead of a second rounder. That's going to be, just by the nature of you picking earlier, you get a better chance at getting a player who can make an impact at the NFL level if you're picking a first rounder as opposed to somewhere in the second round. The charts that show the players that play a significant amount of snaps in the NFL, the bell curve or whatever, it goes way down as soon as you get into after the top 15, after the top 20, and it just keeps going down and down and down. So the earlier you can select a player, the better chance you have of that player being a contributor and a real good one for you. So that first rounder, you're going to get, it's a higher value pick no matter where it lands. But the other potential pro to it is that depending on how that team that you've traded with does in 2026, say they have a shitty season, you could maybe even get a top 5 pick, a top 10 pick out of that. But you don't know. It could end up being 32. It also could end up being the first pick overall. You just don't know. But if it's a top 5 or top 10 pick, even top 15, that's a huge amount of value that you'd have in 2027. And it would give you 2 picks, first round picks, assuming the Vikings don't trade away their own first rounder, but you'd have 2 first round picks in 2027 that the Vikings could use potentially as ammo if they want to move up and get their next quarterback of the future in the 2027 draft. Like a Dante
Moore goes
off
to play for somebody else. Yeah. And JJ McCarthy doesn't step up.
Yeah. So again, this is just, crystal ball gazing, but I just wonder if people would be, just something to think about, I guess, with Greenard. And again, but I'm right now, I prefer if Greenard was a Viking in 2026, because I think he's not going to just get 3 sacks if he's healthy in 2026. He's going to get a lot more than that.
And if you sign up for Vikings First and SKOL Discord, you can see what Tyler Fornes says in his rumor mill about said Jonathan Greenard. And it's changed over the last 24 hours. So we'll find out. Oh. So if you're a member, if you're not, it's linked in the write-up. Go check us out at Vikings First and SKOL Discord.
And earlier, I didn't thank her, but Ruby gifted a whole bunch of memberships to people in the chat. So she does this all the time. So I thank her once again for doing that.
Yes.
Has been traded to the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
All right. Now on to the next topic. The Vikings draft picks.
Well, yes, because the NFL announced the comp picks for all NFL teams this week. And as expected, the Vikings got the top comp pick overall, number 97, because Sam Darnold signed with the Seahawks for a pretty significant amount of money and also played the whole season and won the Super Bowl. We won't dwell on that too much. So the Vikings got the top comp pick, number 97 overall. Just as they got the top comp pick the previous year, in which they used to pick Ty Felton when Kirko Jane signed for the Falcons for a significantly amount of more money than Darnold signed for in Seattle. The Falcons, however, did not end up winning the Super Bowl in 2024. But but that's the only comp pick that the Vikings got, which was also expected. There was some hope that the Daniel Jones signing with Indy and winning the starting job there and playing a lot, that the Vikings would potentially get a 4th or a 5th rounder. But because Eric Wilson surprisingly ended up getting us as a starting position and playing so much, it canceled that out. So we only end up getting the 1.
If Daniel Jones had only not gotten hurt.
Yes. Yeah. Tore that Achilles.
Mm-hmm. But Eric Wilson's played great, so
yes, yeah. No regrets there. But it did. The Vikings only got the 1, again, expected, but it did get me thinking about next year and the way free agency has gone so far. Again, we've with the how many comp picks might the Vikings get in 2027? Will they get any? I think that's the question, because they have nobody on the roster unless Carson Wentz somehow signs with somebody and starts.
It's not going to happen, folks.
Yeah, Dave laughs hilariously at the thought.
Maybe he'll go to the Jets. They're rumored to want him. Yes.
Yeah, except the Jets just traded for Geno Smith, so he ain't going to start over there, I don't think. But they don't have any quarterback that's going to sign a big deal and be a starter, and so we can get the top comp pick for the 3rd year in a row, like we did when Darnold and Kirko signed away. But it would be nice to get some. So I'm wondering, right now, again, the Vikings have only signed 2 outside free agents right now. Pierre was the only one. He signed a very reasonable 2-year deal for not a whole lot of money. Kyler Murray doesn't count to the comp formula because he was released by the Cardinals. So the Cardinals aren't owed a comp pick, and it doesn't impact the Vikings formula for comp picks either. I think that, but Jalen Naylor did sign with the Las Vegas Raiders, 3 years, 36 million, depending on, so that's a pretty big contract for him. And if he plays a lot, when you couple that with Ryan Wright signing the 4-year, $14 million deal with the Saints, maybe those guys combined with the fact that we haven't signed really anybody of note in free agency ourselves outside the organization, maybe the Vikings do get 1 comp pick in 2027. But that's something that we're going to have to track as the 2026 season goes on to see, how much Naylor is playing. Is Wright healthy? Was he able to play the whole year? And also the Vikings, who they sign here in the 2nd and 3rd wave of free agency. Are they signing guys who were actually free agents who weren't cut by their teams, or are they signing guys who were cut, in which case they again wouldn't count against the comp formula that the NFL has? We'll have to track that as the season goes on. Pretty unclear right now if the Vikings will get comp picks, but it's not looking good based on how many players who were Vikings last year and that we didn't cut are being coveted and signed by other teams. Pretty much it's Naylor and Wright. I don't think anybody else.
Anybody else qualifies, and Wright may not because his salary is relatively low. Obviously, it's not for a punter, but the total of it is low. I think you're only looking at Naylor.
And again, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, they have signed with other teams, but they don't count either because we released them. They weren't free agents.
Now, I want to thank the other teams for putting them on 2-year salaries, which will, once we get to 2027, will credit the Vikings with money, which is cool.
Thank you, Adam, for chiming in there on how you think that you were saying that Wright and Pierre will cancel out, and so that Naylor might get us a 5th or 6th comp pick, 6th-rounder comp pick, which isn't as good as the top comp pick in the 3rd round, but it's something.
Right. So, anyways, that brings us to the end of the show. And I want to thank everybody that's joined us. You guys have been great. We've been over 100 viewers all show. You guys actually rocked. And if you need another picture of Kyler Murray, sorry, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
But
Dave couldn't find any of Murray playing in grade school.
No. Well, there's the one with his Vikings uniform. I thought of that when he was young, and he talked about, he grew up a Vikings fan because he was part of the Vikings in Pop Warner. He was the best player, reportedly, to come out of Texas, and there's been some great players come out of Texas. We'll see. Hopefully he is. He takes us to the Super Bowl. Hopefully it takes Murray and KOC, and they finally win something. Let's see.
We are going to see, Dave, in a few months.
Any last words, everybody?
Well, we didn't get at the hitman situation, and I'm going to let that marinade for a week, and I think we'll get to it next week. Have some thoughts on that, but I didn't want to go too long today, even though we always go pretty long. But that's what we do here at Two Old Bloggers. We go in depth.
Yes, we do. And it's the whole week of what happened, and we go in depth on our thoughts, how we analyze it, and we shall see. And there's good buddy asked, are we going to get to the draft? We will get to the draft. There, Drew. Don't worry.
There was also
plenty of time.
There was also a comment much earlier in the show at the beginning of wanting our opinions on why the Vikings have done what they've done in free agency. I think that we did sort of cover that, but
the Wolves,
the Wolves, and the whole strategy of. I think also that Brzezinski is interim general manager right now. We do not know if he is interested in being the full-time general manager. We do not know if the Wolves, if he were interested, the Wolves would select him. I think that they would, but I think this is what they're doing here is they're trying not to have the Vikings commit too many dollars and years and saddle the new general manager with those contracts. I think that might be part of the reason why they're being frugal. And I think they're also looking at in 2027, they could have a pretty fairly clean slate in the salary cap and much more space. And they might be needing to sign Kyler Murray then to a sizable amount of a deal, or they might be looking to draft a new quarterback early in that draft, and they're looking at they got to keep their draft picks. They want to have a pretty fulsome salary cap situation so they can add players if they're starting a rookie again. I think there's a lot of things that have gone into why the Vikings have done what they've done so far in free agency, or more accurately, what they have not done so far in free agency.
Mm-hmm. All right, buddy. What do we say?
We say SKOL Vikings, and thank you for watching.
SKOL Vikings. Come on. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!